everyone. Welcome back to the Women Who podcast. Today we have a really special guest with us. She's a dear friend of ours. She goes to our church. Her name is Kano. And we wanted her to be our guest today because September is actually National Suicide Awareness Month. And so before we get started, we do just want to give a warning to anyone who is struggling with suicide or knows someone who's struggling with suicide, that this might be a trigger. So before you keep watching, please keep that in mind. Before you keep listening, please keep that in mind. We will be putting references like the suicide hotline in the description of this podcast, as well as other links that we think would help. So we're excited to be here. We know it's a heavy topic, but like we've said, the purpose of this podcast is to dive deep where others are afraid to go. And we don't journey this alone. So Kano, welcome. Brittany and I are so excited to have you here. And we just, before I get started, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the scary statistics of suicide. And I think, suicide right now is the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. And within the last couple years, men are actually 4 times more as likely to end their life committing suicide. So these numbers are rising. In 2022, 49,000 people ended their lives in suicide, and that's one life gone in 11 minutes. And the numbers just continue to rise. So I think we wanted to have this podcast. Obviously, you're going to have time to share your story with us, your testimony, God's faithfulness in your life. And we're so happy you're here with us. But to also just talk and bring awareness to this topic, where again, people are afraid to go. And so if you kind of just want to introduce yourself to our listeners, and, I speak for Brittany and myself, we're so excited that you're here.
Very. Okay, so hi, my name is Kano. I'm Venezuelan. I've been in the United States for the past 6, almost 7 years. I've been part of this amazing women community for about a year or something like that. And yeah, I own 2 amazing dogs that they were part of like God's, tools that he used to pull me out of like that dark and deep place. And then I have my family here, thank God. My brother is the one who's away, but soon to be reunited.
Awesome.
All right. So we wanted to dive into your story. Obviously, you have a testimony, and we want to share your testimony because we want to offer hope. And we wanted to kind of dive into, the beginning stages of where it began, what your darkest moments maybe looked like. And then we'll move from that to, how you kind of got out of it, what your support system looked like. And we'll continue from there.
Okay. So actually, last year, I think it was the hardest one. But I've been in this dark place, as I call it, 3 times. Last year was the 3rd time. The first one was when I was, I think 14, 15. At the time, my parents were like recently getting divorced. And I think that was a trigger, just like feeling that I was the only one in my class that was facing that, like a teenager, just like not having people around her to like support herself. And then later on in life, I truly don't know, but what was the trigger in that time? I think I had a discussion with somebody, an argument, and then that person said words that like just made me feel that I just didn't want to like wake up the next day. Like that was the thought. I was like, I don't want to wake up. And then at that time, I was 21, 22 years old. And then I was like, oh my God, like what's happening right now? Why am I feeling like this again? Because I met Jesus when I was like 16. And then I have Jesus. I have a community now. Like, why do I feel that I don't want to wake up again? And then I remember I was going at that time to a psychologist, and she was like helping me out with other like struggles that I had. But actually in that moment, I just felt that I didn't have the support from her. Like I felt that she was not believing what I was telling her. This was back when I was in Venezuela. And then later on, that through that year, I immigrated to the United States. And I think a part of like the survival mode that my body went into, the whole like not wanting to wake up, it was just more like, okay, I need to be brave. And then all of that cloud went away because I had hope. You know, I had hope in a new future and a new beginning, you know, like starting like new in a new country. I'm going to meet new people, new friends, like all this stuff. So all of that went away. And I felt like back, you know, in a certain way, like secure that I had, you know, hope to live by.
Yeah.
And then last year, I just honestly can say that financial instability can be a really, really hard thing that it can affect like your mental health and like everything overall. And then at the beginning of the year, I lost that stability that I had like in a job. And then it was just like so hard because I was at the time the head of the household. Like I was caring for my mom and then my dogs. And I was just like living a very independent life, and suddenly that hit. But I think there were like hidden traumas inside of me that just started to pop out. And then that thought of like, I just don't want to wake up tomorrow, it came back. And then I think when I realized that I was on that, you know, like on that movement again, it was like around May last year, but I was just not so sure. I was like, is this me? Is this my, you know, my hormones? Like, because I was not working out as often, like what's going on? And then I started like even putting doubts of myself. Like, is this, you know, feeling like back? And then I think by the summer, I had a wake up call and I realized that I was just way too deep already. Like, it was more that I don't want to wake up anymore. It was like, okay, what's the plan? Like, how this is going to happen.
So you went from the thought to actually wanting to create a plan of how to execute it.
Yes.
Because that seed of that thought was at this point almost 15 years old.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
So like the other times, I pretty much just thought about it. I had once when I was younger, I had a plan, but then I was like, you know, like, let me try to like do something else, you know, like there's something I can grab myself from something. And then in that time, I met Jesus. Like, I think it was just a whole purpose thing.
Right.
And then like this time it was just like so many things, you know, like I felt that it was just a pile of things that I didn't heal before, that I didn't pay attention before. And then I was like, okay, you know, like my parents are here, they have jobs, you know, I think they can pretty much take care of themselves. And, you know, like my only concern, like honestly, was like, oh my God, like what am I gonna do with the dogs? You know, I don't want to leave that responsibility to my mom. Like, I committed to them. And then my thought was like, oh my God, but I need to like continue to wake up for 10 more years at least. So I was just like trying to figure it out. Like, what do I do? You know, like, do I give it to my best friends? You know, like what am I gonna do? So like that was one of the things that it was, you know, a step, like, you know, like a rock in my plan. You know, I will always step into it like, oh my God, the dogs, you know, I'll find solutions for everything else. But then I was like, but the dogs, you know, like I committed myself, and my parents taught me how to like be very responsible of the things that I commit. You know, if you're gonna do a sport, you gotta commit at least for like 2-3 weeks, you know, and see if you like it. And then, you know, have that discipline. And then I committed to the dogs, and I kept the dogs, you know, from my past relationship. And like, they were my dogs, I trained them. And I was like, how am I gonna dump this responsibility in somebody else? What if my mom gets sick and then she cannot care for the dogs? Like, how mean I'm gonna be like leaving them behind. And I think that was like literally the tool that God used for me to like, you know, like get out of it. Because it was not only the fact of me worrying about what was gonna happen to them if I left. It was the worry of like, it was the responsibility that I had already of like, I had to take care of them. Like, I need to provide food. I need to find a way to like feed them. I need to walk them. So like, I think those daily walks, sometimes they were like just 5 minutes, like getting out of my house, just a little bit of sun ray, that I think it helped. And then I remember like feeling a little better whenever I would go like outside, like whenever I was able to wake up and get off the bed, they needed to go outside. So I will literally, okay, like I'm gonna put the leash on and walk them for a little bit, and that helped. Like that definitely helped, like those 5 minutes. And then another thing that like helped, it was that I kept my routine of I need to go to church on Sundays. Those were the only 2 things that I kept. I didn't care about anything else. I didn't care about going to any social events. If I was there, it was a miracle because, you know, like I just didn't feel like it. And I would like literally put on the best Sunday outfit, best makeup, and show up to church. And, you know, giggle around, laugh, you know, like be the best of myself. But then I would get on the car and drive home. And, you know, like meanwhile I was driving, I was like, what if I do this? Or what if I do that? Or what if this happens?
Wow.
So, you know, like I remember another thing that I was like, is not going to happen with my car, because I had an accident, a car accident when I was in 2019. And then I remember that the sound of that, like it triggers me so much when I hear like something crashing. It's just like, it is really bad. Like it triggers me really bad. I get super nervous, and I was like, I'm not gonna like, you know, reproduce that sound again in my mind. So it's not gonna be with my car, but like I will have ideas, you know? And it was just like, okay, what if I do this or that? And then it was just like, I would literally put on a show. And I think a lot of it comes from like the Latin culture, because as a woman in the Latin culture, you need to show up always perfect, polite, you know, like well-dressed, makeup, all of the things. And then I was like, you know, like this is part of what I grew up with. I need to just do my hair, do my makeup. And if it takes me 3 hours to do something that it usually takes me 50 minutes, I just need to know ahead that it's, you know, I need to start getting ready at noon to go to a 6 p.m. service.
Wow. And I was going to ask you like how you found the strength to go show up and to go get dressed and do your makeup. But you totally just answered that for us. It's that culture. The way that you were raised was no matter what is going on in the inside, you have to appear perfect on the outside.
Yeah, that's what dragged me for like most of the time. Just like, oh, I have to keep showing up. You know, like just keep coming back.
Yeah.
It became just like, oh, I have to show up. You know, like I have to come back just because they're, you know, I've been told and I have to show up. You know, like it's part of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, what you said about the sunlight is super important. I remember in college when I tried to take my own life by taking a bunch of pills. I woke up in the hospital and ended up being Baker acted. So I wasn't able to leave for at least 3 days. And those 3 days when you're waking up from being unconscious and realizing what just happened, all you have is the cold, the fluorescent lighting, no windows. And I think it's so important because when I do research on this topic and on suicide awareness, so many people have done surveys where others say suicide could be prevented with better health care and with more community surrounding it. And so I think, you know, we think that, medication, Western medication is so important if you're struggling with mental health. But I also think if we could somehow incorporate like God's medicine, like nature's medicine, sunlight, fresh air, I think it would help so much, because I remember being in the hospital and thinking all I wanted to do was go outside.
Yes.
I just needed to breathe in new life. And so when you wake up from trying to end your life in this kind of prison, you know, it just kind of makes it worse. And I think you can probably relate to that, like in the sense of it being a cycle, because you did say you thought about it 3 times and you made a plan once. So it doesn't just go away. And I think us talking about how do we heal whatever traumas or triggers that we've had in our past, so that we can stop the cycle. And I think that's really important to talk about also.
Well, yeah. And I think part of it is also you get to a point where you have to overcome that fear of talking about it. And I think you both have had to have the strength so much deeper than who, like you know, and you has to pull from somewhere. And then the next question would be, what was your support system like? And I think sometimes it's always there. It's just, are you willing to reach out your hand and ask for it?
Yes.
Right.
So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what your support system looked like, and when you got to that realization that you needed help, you know, and you needed to verbalize that help.
So, I remember that after I had like the second time that I had the thoughts when I was 22, I was with this psychologist, and she just didn't pour hope on me. Like, she didn't like help me. That's the reality of it. And then I remember that I was like, you know, like that's canceled for me. But I was trying to heal during 2022 as well. My past relationships and, you know, like the past traumas. And then I remember reaching out to like a different psychologist. I was like, okay, maybe this has been a little rough other times, but I need to give it a try.
Right.
So at the time, I met with two different psychologists. One of them, I clicked with her. Like, we started like, you know, building up the relationship, you know, as a therapist and, you know, all of that. But then later on, when I started feeling the way I was feeling, I was even like putting up a show for her.
Right.
So I was just like, you know, making it seem that I was getting better from the other things. But in reality, I was just not diving deeper.
Wow.
I started just like putting up a wall without even necessarily like think, okay, and you know, like she's not going to notice. But I feel that she did. You know, that there was something on her.
Like she saw the mask.
That she was noticing, and she was trying to like go deeper, and like, you know, I was, you know, like pulling back in a certain way. And then later on, I stopped seeing her because of the financial problem. So I was just like, okay, let me just stop. And then somehow there was a day that I was literally getting out of service from church, and I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody today. Like, I'm over this mask. Like, I want to take it off as soon as possible. I'm going to go to service, and after service, I'm just going to run out. And after I leave, that's it. You know, like, it's going to be the shortest mask. You know, I'm over of like going out after service. Like, I don't want to do this. And that day I was just like so focused on like, I'm literally going to sit outside of my friend circle. Like, I'm gonna sit by myself in my own corner, and then after I'm done, like, I'm literally just gonna run out. And after I run out, I'm gonna go to my house like super quickly. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I remember that day I was trying to run out and I got stopped. And then I was just like, oh my God, like, I need to leave. Like, that was my whole thing. I was like, I feel so desperate. I don't want to be here. And then in that moment, I remember like somebody telling me, you cannot like keep running away. Like, and I felt that was like literally the Holy Spirit, like on that person, because nobody knew what I was going through.
Did you know that person?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I was just like,
but they didn't know what you were going through.
Like, they didn't know. And it was just like, you know, like you need to stop this. And I was just like, how this person knows that, you know, like they don't know anything. Like, I've been like, just like being this whole different
putting the
person.
mask on. Yeah.
Yes. And then, and when I was trying to like get out of the crowd, I faced one of my gut friends, and I was like, okay, I think this can be the only safe place. And I literally I told her what I was feeling and what I was thinking, and she ran out with me, and like she hugged me, and she's like, we're gonna get through this, and you know, we're gonna make it happen. I don't know how am I gonna do it, but we're gonna do it together.
Wow.
And then she's like, you have a therapist because we have talked about this. You got to reach out to her immediately. And you got to like try to tell another person. Promise me that you're going to do this. And then if you do this, I promise you we're going to help each other out. And I was like, okay, like she gave me 2 tasks. Let me see if I can accomplish one of them. You know, I had the task of like, okay, I need to do the dog thing. I have to go to church on Sundays. Okay, this is another task. I was like, okay, if I can complete this, I think I can, you know, like get out. So I literally immediately reached out to my therapist that at the time she was living in Germany. So the time difference was like completely off. And I told her, I'm having suicidal thoughts. I've been building this. I need your help, but I don't have money. And she was so amazing, so grateful, so graceful. Like she was just like, I don't know. It was a blessing because she's not even a Christian, but she was just like so willing to help, so willing to be there. She's like, don't worry about the money right now. We have to take care of this. When you have availability, like first time, like let's have a chat and whatever. And then she told me, I need you to tell other people. Same thing that my friend told me. And I was like, I already told 2 people. And she's like, no, you got to give me 5.
Wow.
Please give me 5. You have 2, you're missing 3. Try to talk to somebody, tell whoever you think.
And did she say why?
She said that we needed to build a safe circle.
Yeah.
Because we needed to create that awareness.
The awareness to build that support system.
Yes. So she's like, it doesn't matter how they react. They just need to know. And then I just started, my mind was like going back to like that Latin thought of like, oh my God, they're going to judge me. Like they've been seeing me so happy and joyful. Like, what are they going to think about me? Like she's going crazy how she, like shows up at church and like all well dressed up and makeup and stuff. And then she's telling me all of this. And my mind started just like going into those circles. And I was like, you have a task. Your task is to find 3 other people. It doesn't matter who it is. And I remember at the time I was really close friends with the doctor. And I remember telling him about what was going on. But my fear was like, I'm going to end up locked in the hospital. And he told me, I'm nobody to judge. We as healthcare providers, we go through so much already. And we go through those cycles. But he told me again, another person is like, you need to continue to build people around you. And he asked me because he knew the names of my friend. Have you told this person? Have you told this person? Have you told this person? Make sure that the people that you have talked to me about, they know.
Right.
Like I cannot be as close in proximity, but make sure that the people around you know. So I remember after I told like the 4th person, it was easier and easier. And there was a point that I was like, okay, like I'm ready to tell my dad, which in the past, like telling my parents was always a struggle because my mom would like suffer so much. Like I remember her sleeping in my room, making sure that was just like not moving. At least she was moving. Like she was sleeping on the floor next to me. In the past. And then I was like, I just don't want this, like I don't want to feel pushed. I don't want to feel like, like in a square, like, being watched. And then I called my dad and I told him, hey dad, I'm having suicidal thoughts. And he took it so calmly that I just don't know what God put on him. And he's like, okay, but you have good people around you, better than what you had before. It's like, have you talked to them? Have you talked to the people in your church? Mind you, my dad is not Christian. Like, he believes in God, but he was pushing me towards the church. Right? He's like, you go to church, you have your friends from church. Like, have you talked to them about it? And then he asked me, are you talking to your psychologist? He's just pointed me to the right directions. And he's like, you're going to get through this. This is not the first time. You're going to get through this. And like, there's, something's going to happen and you're going to see the hope. It's like, just let's take it one day at a time, little by little, and you're going to see the hope. And I, little by little, literally build up that circle, build up that safe space. And I was not on reality, like checking in with them as often as you should. But I felt that in a way I couldn't do anything to myself because there was people in a certain way watching me. And I was like, if they already know, they're going to be hurt because they didn't do something, they didn't say something or whatever. So I was like, I just don't want to keep hurting people. It's enough by hurting my parents, which is a whole lot. Like if I leave this earth, it's going to be really hard on them. And I don't want to hurt these other people that are like, like brand new friends to me. And they appreciate me like in this season of my life. And I know that they're going to be long lasting friendships. I just don't want to hurt them.
Yeah.
And that was a thought that kept me from like pulling up away from like the suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
And, going to therapy, I remember it was really hard, like to listen to my psychologist telling me, you are facing a severe depression and you should be getting medication right now, you should be in a hospital because what you have right now, like your brain, your hormones, your whole body is in complete collapse. And I understand that you don't want to do it that way, but if you don't want to do it that way, you're going to have to cooperate. So we're going to have to, you know, set routines. You know, you're walking the dogs once a day. Let's do it twice a day. During the daylight, you know, like she started pointing at me. And then I think having those tasks as well as a circle, it's like one thing. And I wouldn't feel like guilty. You know, oh, I only walked dogs once today. Okay, that's fine. Maybe tomorrow I can do two.
So you had grace.
Yes. So I started building up that grace, you know, like that strength on like, okay, if I can, you know, eat once, walk the dogs once, you know, like watch some TV show, that's something. If on Sunday I can talk to two people, that's something. You know, like I will put like little tasks just like that.
Right.
And then I think putting those little things just started helping me to like see the light. And honestly, having people that even though I didn't check on them or, you know, like as often because I was scared, having those people that, you know, I will be like triggered for something and I will text, you know, the 3 or 4 closest one and be like, hey, this is what's happening. And then I remember also the days that I wouldn't like answer the phone or like I didn't want to do anything. I remember one of my best friends, like she knew how much I had like a love for Starbucks. And like she would literally be like, hey, I'm outside of your house. Come get your Starbucks from the car.
I love that. That's a good friend right there.
Yeah. Like it was just like
Starbies for the win.
Literally. She's like, I don't know if this is your drink, but I want you to walk out of the house.
To get it.
Yeah. So she would literally like she has my house keys. Like I didn't need it to literally walk out. Like, but she's like, you need to walk outside and like, you know, she will keep me outside for like a few minutes just to talk to me, you know, like getting out of like, I don't care how you're looking. You just need to walk out. Yeah. And like, I think that helped a lot. Like having like those people that will pull me out of their routine.
So I have a question for you. I think depression wears a lot of masks. And you've kind of said that it's like oftentimes it's the people you wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to ask because I know personally I've had people open up to me regarding their thoughts on suicide. But I would love like to guide the people maybe who have other individuals in their life who've come to them with these thoughts and this vulnerability. What kind of support do you wish you had gotten or that you did receive that really held weight for you?
I think the accountability of like, have you talked to your psychologist?
Yes.
You know, like going back to that because it's important, 100% important to have that in a way clinical help. You know, and in that way it is very important. And I know that therapy can be expensive, but if you have the chance to talk to your psychologist, to your therapist, I think they will be more than happy to accommodate. Meanwhile, if you don't have the money, because they are there to help. And like,
you have to ask.
Like it's just about asking and being honest. Hey, I'm going through this. This is what's happening. So I think that was one of the things. The other one is just like, I feel that helped a lot. I didn't want it to go anywhere. But receiving the invitations made me feel that there was somebody out there that cared for me.
Right.
Yeah.
That they wanted me around still.
Right.
You know, like receiving those invitations of like, oh, let's go to dinner. Let's go to do this. You know, like whatever it was. I think I was like, oh, I matter at least a little bit, or at least for this person, you know, like, and there were some times that I just didn't want it to be around somebody, but you know, like the fact of having somebody that just was, I think this is something that I didn't necessarily receive, but I would appreciate if I had it, because you become very isolated and very lonely. And sometimes you just want somebody that sits close in proximity, you know, like right there is fine. And just sits next to you. Like that person can be just like reading, watching a show or whatever.
Right. And like you're not expecting, or you didn't need them to talk or say anything. You just wanted that presence of somebody else.
So I think that's a great reminder for someone on the other side that there's that pressure sometimes that we have to have the right words, or that we have to have the answers. And I think you just said it right there. And I just want to encourage the audience, you know,
Yeah.
if they have someone in their life and they're not sure what to say or what the best approach is, just being there.
Yeah.
Just being
Be
there,
there.
being a listening ear when they're ready to talk.
Yeah.
Don't even offer food, because sometimes we don't wanna do anything, you know. It's like, just be like, hey, I'm gonna show up to your house, I have something to read on, you know, like if you need me, I'm gonna be downstairs.
Wow.
Or whatever it is, you know, like
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be anything special, but like that's one of the things that I wish I had a little bit more.
Right.
Because yes, my mom was like living with me, but she didn't know. Like she didn't know,
Right.
because I was so scared of like telling her, and like her freaking out about like the whole situation, that I didn't tell her. But like, you know, it was her presence was just like I was struggling with her presence at a point before she knew everything, because I was just like so tense of like, oh my God, like my mom is gonna realize that something wrong with me. I'm not putting the masks properly, you know, like,
Right.
and I just wanted somebody, because as a mom, she was gonna worry, she was gonna ask questions, and I just didn't want that. I just wanted somebody that
Just
sat next to me, and that's it. Even just like, oh, let's watch Finding Nemo. If you don't want to watch it, that's what I want to watch. You know, like whatever it is, just like somebody that is close in proximity, and I think that that's helpful.
And I think, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
And I think something that is hard to verbalize in those moments is like the kind of support that you're looking for.
Yes.
So I think that's why I care to ask that question, because again, I want to make sure that it's clear on both ends, like what the symptoms, what you can take action to do when you're feeling these ways, that it's okay and it's safe to go ask for help and get a psychologist, go to therapy, you know, use all of our tools. And then you have the community, you have the walks, you have your dogs, you have always a big why for you, and that's beautiful. And I just care to like share these tools of encouragement, and that there are ways and resources out of this, you know?
Yeah. And I think too, I love that, you know, I realized I didn't have this support. No one knew. My roommates found me. So, different story, like same story, different, you know, plot, I guess. But I think it's so beautiful, because when people told you, they told you to do something. They gave you a task.
Yes.
And as Christians, if you think about every miracle of healing that Jesus did, he told them, stand up. He gave them a task to do first.
100%.
You know, the woman had to touch his cloak. The man at the well had to stand up.
Yes.
And I think it's powerful to know, because there's times, you know, when I was struggling with this, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get out of bed
Yes.
for weeks.
Yes.
But I you know, I think had I had someone tell me, hey, get up and just sit outside for 5 minutes, would that have made a difference? You know, I don't know. But I think for people who might be struggling with this now, or know someone who is, like, for healing, we do have to play a part to get the healing, you know? And we have to have tasks. And I think that's so beautiful that your friends gave you those tasks, so that you felt like, okay, again, I have a purpose. You know, when you got invited to places, you felt important. When your friends told you to do something, you had a purpose. And I think those are a lot of times things that people lack when we feel isolated, when we feel depressed. For those who struggle with suicidal thoughts, it could be whatever reason, but we lack identity and purpose, and no one loves us, no one cares about us. I'm all alone. I'm dealing with this alone, and it's that isolation that really can bring people to their knees, and you know, to this really, really dark place. And so I'm so thankful that you've had the support that you've had. And I just want to encourage anyone out there too, is, again, like Brittany said, even if it's so hard for you to share it, just say, I'm struggling. That's it. And go to someone that you trust.
Yes.
And then I also think for the people who are receiving that text of I'm struggling, don't ever dumb it down. You know, we never know what people are going through behind the mask. And so I think take it with weight. If someone you know is struggling, you don't have to have all the answers, but just know that your presence alone can really help. And I think for us, the power of praying for someone who has these thoughts or a plan is so powerful also. Sometimes we don't know what to say or what to do for someone, but if we can surrender it for them to God, I think that's a huge help also.
Yeah, I think like even outside of like somebody like laying hands on me and praying for me, because I didn't want it to be touch or approach at that time, having somebody and saying, hey, this is what's happening, no questions asked, like if you receive that text message, you don't need to ask any questions. Just be like, hey, how can I support you? Or like, what do you need me to do? You don't need to be like, what are your thoughts? What are you doing? How deep you're going? Like you don't ask for any information that is not being given to you, because you have to respect that space. But I think it's so brave from like the person that is going through it to just like say it. I'm struggling. I need help, or whatever, words come out. If you cannot say it, write it down.
Right.
Like give a letter to somebody, like, because
Journal.
sometimes it's so hard to like say it, just like voice it out, because your voice is gonna break. You're gonna feel so nervous.
Yeah.
You're gonna feel that somebody's gonna point a finger at you. Just like write it down and give it to somebody. You just be like, hey, this. And I promise you with all my heart that that's gonna open up a little bit more that door from that dark room, and you're gonna start seeing a little bit of light coming in little by little. And then having that person like being in the other side, like no need to ask questions, just like be there.
Right.
Literally, like, how can I help you? How can I support you? And if that person doesn't answer you, it's like just remind them that they matter.
Yes.
You're there for them. And that's it. Like call me if you need anything, if whatever, like surprise them with a coffee like my friend did. Like, hey, I'm outside. I brought you your favorite meal or whatever.
Right.
And don't expect them for them to eat it because you don't feel like it, but just like show up.
Yeah.
Like it's showing up. I think that's a great part of it.
Yeah.
So don't feel pressure that you have to have the perfect words for those people that are struggling, but just be there. Just like being present.
I love that. Is I want to kind of hit on some final thoughts on this. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners that maybe we haven't covered?
I think something that it was very important to me, besides having like the community and the whole support, I was technically pushed, a little bit forced to do a care crew, which is part of things that our church does.
The small groups of our church.
Small groups. And then it's called Soul Care. It's a book and it has 7 principles. And it was not the easiest thing to do, but it was so beautiful to see how my therapy was aligning to what I was reading in the book.
Oh, I love that, because Brittany and I are actually doing soul care together, and I'm doing therapy also. So hopefully, I'll get some healing that way too.
It does help a lot, and I think just literally showing up. Like I had the task of like, oh, I have to go to therapy once a week or twice a week, depending on how heavy the week was, and then I have to go to soul care this day. And it didn't matter if it was delayed or whatever. I was just like showing up. I was there. And then I did the whole thing. And I can tell you that it was one of the tools that God used for me to find healing and for me to finally get rid of that root that it was inside of me that was making my house inside of me dark.
Well, it's because those are all the symptoms, right?
Yeah.
Like we talk about how depression is a symptom of what's the root cause of the depression. And I think that's something that people think, oh, I'm depressed and that it ends there. But but what is causing that? Depression's a symptom. Anxiety's a symptom. So that's beautiful that book can help you uproot that root and help you plant new soil and new trees.
It was challenging, but I honestly loved the process because it also shows you like the way that the book teaches you how to go through the principles. You have to do it in group, so somehow I was built into more accountability.
Right, because it's a confessional life.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like I was built into more accountability, and maybe there were moments that I just didn't want to talk in the class, but I had other people that literally were like, hey, did you share it today? Did you talk about this? And I can tell you that there's light at the end of the tunnel. There is. because I am a walking miracle. I literally had
Amen.
everything planned, but God had a plan.
Right.
And
I-
his plan always prevails.
Yes, and I can tell you that I'm grateful that I stay here on this earth, because I've seen so many more beautiful things like after the whole process that I went through last summer, and I've seen like my own life being a miracle, and it's just like I feel full of hope now. Sometimes after you struggle with these things, you're like, "Oh my God, is it going to come back?" But I'm not scared of it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that right now I have a little bit of a stronger system that whatever I had when I was 21 or 15. And I know that I can count on people, and like my faith is stronger than before, because our faith is a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's always changing, like the seasons, like it's the same thing. Like we can reflect ourselves with the nature. We go through cycles. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be a devotional life the whole time. There's moments that it's going to be a little bit lower, but just being like, hey, God, I'm here.
Right.
He's there for you all the time.
Yeah. I heard something recently that said, if you're walking through a valley, don't lose hope, because the only way to have a valley is that there's two mountains on each side.
Yes.
There's a mountain on each side,
Yeah.
so you're closer to getting there than you think.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to recap on some of the tools that you offered. You mentioned journaling was a tool. I think that's a great method to maybe when you're not ready to speak it out, to just be honest with yourself. And there's something beautiful
Yes.
that happens between a pen and a paper. Like you had mentioned as well, reaching out, being brave enough to just simply, say, hey, I'm thinking these things. I need help, and whatever that means. I think you mentioned soul care as being a tool that you use. There's a couple other books that I would recommend. Brene Brown's a wonderful author. Daring Greatly is a great book. The Body Keeps Score is another one. The Gifts of Imperfection is another one. But I highly recommend these books if you're wanting a resource to just read
Yes.
into and really get a better understanding of where these symptoms might come from.
Mm-hmm.
And having that safe space, and having a safe space to talk to your friends and creating that for yourself, being honest with like
Yes.
what the plan is if you are thinking these thoughts, that you
Yeah.
you have a plan in action of what that's going to mean for
Mhm.
you. And then self-care, I know that seems
Yes.
a practical one, but sometimes it feels very demanding, and you said it, you had to place that into your routine of like, these are the things I need to do. I need to walk the dogs. I need to feed myself once.
Mhm.
And that is self-care,
Yes.
and it seems basic, but it's so necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think planting those, small tasks, like if you the first day you're gonna be able to do only one,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
or maybe not even, but don't punish yourself for not doing
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Just be like, okay, tomorrow maybe I will feel better. Tomorrow maybe I will get up, and tomorrow I will get up and be like, okay, I can get up from my room to the living room.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big step already.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't want to get up from the bed. So
Yeah.
just like doing those small movements,
Right.
like show up for yourself. It is hard. It is definitely hard, but I think if you do those little movements, it helps you so much, and have that grace of like, okay, maybe I didn't do it today, but
Yeah.
I got another chance tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah, it's one step at a time.
Mm-hmm.
That's
But anyway, I thank you so much for sharing your story, your testimony, and again, your miracle that you're here. Again, Brittany and I will be putting some resources and links into the podcast description. And we just want to remind you that you are not alone. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, you can always call the suicide hotline or text them 988. And they also have an online chat too. So if you feel as though you have nobody in your actual corner, there's resources out there. So thanks again, Kano.
Thank you.